If this is bad, you have to stop me like right away so I don't just continue into it. What is biceps tendinitis, you say? Biceps tendinitis, we're actually going to refer to as biceps tendinopathy. The itis actually is more like that very short-term or acute injury, whereas the biceps tendinopathy is any kind of malfunction of the tendon. All right, disclaimer on this. So there's two things you had to be really aware of. If you developed this pain and it was very short and you felt like a pop or any kind of tearing, you need to have a surgical consult, because if you have a distal biceps tear, even if it's just partial, then you need to have a surgical consult. They probably need to do some imaging to make sure that you're going to be okay to continue with your work, activity, etc. If this has been developing over time, you really need to pay attention to what we're talking about in this video, because one, you don't want to deal with it. You want to be able to heal and recover from this injury. But two, and more importantly, you are increasing your risk of developing a distal biceps rupture, which is obviously going to greatly impact your activity and the long-term health of your arm and shoulder and elbow. All right, so if you've developed this issue, I gotta ask right off the bat, how is your climbing technique? Because usually if you're developing a biceps tendinopathy from climbing, if it's distally and not at your shoulder, you're probably using way too much bicep for climbing, or you're following some of these other risk factors. One, you might be doing a lot of like side pulls or underclings. You may be doing a lot of cave climbing, or you may just not be using your feet very well and you're not letting your arms be extended on your rest. All right, so what are the signs and symptoms of this? Well, you're basically going to experience discomfort in the front of the elbow, right at the crease of the elbow joint. You shouldn't be experiencing pain on the outside or on the inside of it. Those are separate issues, which we have videos for both of those issues. So if that's where your pain is, check those out. Now, you'll probably feel a little bit more pain when your wrist goes into this supinated position or the palm up position, and you'll feel it with resisted elbow flexion, or if you're really straightening your arm out. So those are all some of the signs and symptoms. Now, due to the location of this pain, you need to also rule out a median nerve involvement. Because with climbing, we're often also in this actual pronated position, and a lot of times we go into this locked off position, we can develop kind of an overuse of our pronator muscle, which can entrap that nerve because the nerve runs right underneath that muscle. So you need to be able to differentiate a median nerve entrapment from a distal biceps tendinopathy. You're probably going to feel some tension on both sides. The only way this is positive is if one side is clearly more remarkable or if it produces your symptoms. So the median nerve test, the arm is slightly to your side. You bring it a tiny bit behind you. You're not really extending far back. Palm is forward. You bring your fingers back. If this simply reproduces your symptoms, stop there. If not, next step, lower the shoulder down. If that then reproduces your symptoms, again, stop there. If not, what you're going to do is you're going to bring your head away from that side and then back towards. So what you should likely feel is as your head comes away, you'll feel increased tension. As it comes towards, you should feel decreased tension. So I feel that in my right side, but if I do that in my left, I feel it there and it feels exactly the same. So I fit into that like 86% of the population that has this positive, but they feel the same to me. That doesn't mean I have a median nerve entrapment. So to treat this issue, I gotta go back to what we talked about in the beginning of kind of that like self-inspection on your climbing technique, because usually this is about the climbing technique or your training. Because if you climb like a bunch of cave and you love side pulls and you don't have great technique, and then you're going and doing a ton of pull-ups and just trying to work your upper body like all the time, you're gonna be more prone for this. So the biggest thing is to kind of look back at your training, your climbing, your technique, and see where you can make those corrections, because you're probably doing too much to your biceps. How is your footwork? How is your technique? Are you constantly like locked off or pulling without the arms straight? Or are you constantly like straight-legged and pulling super big distances rather than using your legs and keeping them a little more bent? So that kind of self-reflection on this is going to be really important. What else can we do for this issue? We can obviously do some like compression and icing if we do have that kind of acute inflammation to it. Otherwise, we need to do some gentle stretching to the tissue. We need to do some nice soft tissue mobility to it. So whether that's like just with your own hand or with an instrument tool, then that can be helpful. Otherwise, you need to start some biceps eccentrics. So if you're really inflamed and kind of irritable, you want to start more in the thumb up position, otherwise known as a hammer curl, because it's going to load your bicep, but it's going to also work a different muscle, so not all the force is coming to your bicep. You'll do that about 3 sets of 15, slowly lowering down over 5 seconds. That can be done with a TheraBand or a free weight. I prefer free weights on those because you know exactly how much weight you're doing, whereas with a TheraBand, you might have some differences day to day based on where you grab at the band. TheraBands are easier to acquire and a little bit less expensive than free weights though, so they work perfectly fine. After you've cleared yourself from doing it in the thumb up position, you want to go into the supinated or palm up position. That's now going to recruit more the long head of the biceps, so it's going to target the affected tissue more readily. So same thing with that 5-second lowering eccentric activity, about 3 sets of 15. So for more advanced, once you've cleared yourself from the first 2 positions, the thumb up, the palm up, you flex your shoulder to 90 degrees and then do the same thing. So this is going to put even more pressure on the long head of the biceps as you go through that eccentric. So it's also going to be more relative and more functional for climbing too, because a lot of times when we're in the cave, we're going to be holding ourselves in this position. So now you're training for the activity that you're doing. But if you can't, if you still have pain and you're not getting any better with it, go see a specialist so they can maybe modify your plan and your treatment and get you going from there. But if you can, you should be able to progress through this 90 degrees position, working on that eccentric here, which should take you the rest of the way to be able to return to climbing without developing this issue, as long as you also work on that technique that got you there in the first place. Rolling up the sleeve.
Getting serious here.
So I got a question about distal biceps tendinitis earlier, and so we're going to start talking about that aspect of why I should speak better and crush things better. Viewer question, yeah, user question.
What are they using?
All right, I don't want to say all right again. I always say that. So to treat this issue, should I say the actual question is about biceps? No. I liked it the first way I did it. Okay, I got it. Thanks for the input. I got this. This is gonna be great.
Oh, hey, you're still here. Jason, they're still watching.
Oh. Heyo.
Dude, say something cool so they like the videos and subscribe for more awesome content.
Like and subscribe for more super sweet vids, y'all.
So lame, dude. So lame.
I thought it was pretty good.